common subject in biopics is the musician. There's something about someone coming up with and performing songs that has inspired many a filmmaker to depict their life. Obviously, there are a number of liberties taken when trying to turn it into a narrative, but it depends on the execution and whether what we see on the screen still feels genuine. Musician biopics do tend to run into the issue of somehow portraying every musician's life in the same way. You could have a career as unique as Freddie Mercury, or Elvis Presley, or Johnny Cash, or Ray Charles, but according to their respective biopics, they encountered similar difficulties in their rise to the top, and that can be a problem. There are still some gems out there, though, and I have put together a list of what I consider my favorite musician biopics. A musician biopic can be about a singer, a songwriter, or a concert player, and my requirement to be on this list is that it has to tell a biographical story about a real person. I do want to mention a few movies before I go into the main list. One film I debated whether it should count or not is Amadeus. The film is inspired by the lives of classical composers Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart and Antonio Salieri, so shouldn't it be included? However, the film was never intended as an actual biography, and Milos Forman and Peter Schaefer openly said they saw Amadeus as historical fiction. It was entirely based on the long-proven false rumor that Salieri was responsible for Mozart's death. Amadeus was not even the first depiction of this fake story, as Russian playwright Alexander Pushkin had created a play on this very subject in the 19th century, produced only a few years after Salieri's death. If I did count Amadeus, it would absolutely be number one, as it's a fantastic movie, but like I said, it's not really a biopic. A movie I want to give a shout out to is the biopic parody Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox Story. With this comedy about a fake musician, Jay Kasdan and Judd Apatow cleverly skewered all the conventions of music biopics. You can tell they studied all the tropes of the genre and stuck several into this film as a way to lampoon them. It does it so well that every musician biopic I've seen since watching Walk Hard has had to pass the Walk Hard test. If I avoid being reminded of certain scenes from that movie, well done, you passed the test. If not, it only highlights even more how much they stuck to the familiar cliches. And now that brings me to my list of favorite musician biopics. Tick, Tick, Boom. Centered on the life of Jonathan Larson and based on his one-man stage musical, this film successfully captures the feeling of wanting to prove your worth, but continually dealing with rejection. Lin-Manuel Miranda directed the movie with a lot of energy, while also cleverly integrating the musical numbers into the story. There's a sympathy for Larson as he tries to put together an ambitious rock opera, and Andrew Garfield is pivotal to that with his excellent performance. Even though it's inspired by the creator of Rent, the film largely avoids going too heavy on Easter eggs to Larson's famous musical. It manages to capture a specific time and people in New York City and the difficulty artists face as they try to find an avenue for their creativity. The film also does a very good job of depicting Larson's various relationships, including his best friend, who eventually found another job, and his girlfriend. Tick, Tick, Boom works as a biographical exploration of a real struggling artist, along with being an entertaining and heartfelt musical. Love and Mercy. Most musician biopics follow a specific cradle-to-grave structure, but Love and Mercy is an example of a biography that actually tries something different to its benefit. Rather than telling the entire story of Beach Boys co-founder Brian Wilson, Bill Pollard chose to focus on two specific points in his life. We see Wilson working on the albums Pet Sounds and Smile in the 60s, and his treatment under psychologist Eugene Landy in the 80s. I think highlighting a few key times in a person's life is one of the best ways to make a biopic, so this was a smart choice on Pollard's part. Paul Dano is fantastic as the younger Wilson, showing his creative drive as he creates the albums and the mental effect various complications have on him. John Cusack also does a good job as the later Wilson, with Paul Giamatti making Landy into a truly despicable person. The relationship that develops between Wilson and his wife Melinda is beautifully portrayed. The emotional beats work, and there's an empathy for Brian Wilson as he deals with the unfortunate torment inflicted on him by Landy. The filmmakers found the right way to handle the subject matter and a musician who had to deal with so much, both when writing his timeless songs and several years later. Straight Outta Compton. A lot of musician biopics focus on one specific person. Even ones about a band can decide to make one of the members the main lead. For this movie about the rap group NWA, the emphasis is on three of the people who helped turn it into a success: Ice Cube, Eazy-e, and Dr. Dre. This decision allows the film to remain interesting as we see how each react to their growing fame and the controversies that follow them as they release hit singles like Straight Outta Compton and that one about the police. Director F. Gary Gray, who directed many music videos for hip-hop artists during the 90s, gives the movie the required energy and examines the race relations of the period, which are unfortunately still very familiar to today's viewers. The actors do a tremendous job of playing the roles, with O'Shea Jackson Jr. and Jason Mitchell doing particularly good work as Ice Cube and Eazy-e respectively. Paul Giamatti also does well as their manager. At times the film does incorporate a few elements recognizable from other biopics, but even events like their falling out don't come across as too cliché and fit with what the characters are dealing with at the time. Straight Outta Compton is able to portray this controversial group and show the impact that profanity-laced rap numbers and concert performances had on young people in the late 80s and early 90s. Love Me or Leave Me. Based on the life of singer Ruth Etting, the film is primarily about the control and abuse she suffered under the hands of her first husband, Martin Snyder. The movie is presented like a big glossy musical, although it does not shy away from what a terrible person Snyder was. James Cagney played many villains throughout his career, and Snyder definitely represents one of the most hateful people he ever portrayed on screen. Doris Day is also fantastic as Etting. She nails the song numbers and also portrays the pain Etting went through as she tries to escape Snyder's clutches. Love Me or Leave Me stages several great musical sequences that properly showcase the hit songs Etting performed, although a few new songs were also written specifically for the movie. As was typical with biopics during this era of Hollywood filmmaking, there's certainly liberties taken with the real story. Etting herself actually did not have the highest opinion of it, and said she thought Jane Powell would have been a better choice to play her. If you're looking for a classic piece of Hollywood entertainment, Love Me or Leave Me more than works though. The Pianist. The other entries on this list have primarily depicted a musician building up their career or working on their own compositions. This movie, on the other hand, is about someone dealing with the loss of his musical occupation during a horrific period in recent history. Władysław Szpilman was a highly regarded pianist for Polish radio until the Nazis invaded Poland, and the film manages to show his world changing around him and trying to survive the Holocaust. Adrien Brody is excellent in the lead role, showing him struggling under this monstrous regime. Here is someone whose music was such an important part of his life, and then had it taken away from him all because he was Jewish. The film shows the horrors of the Holocaust, and also how one Nazi officer, Wilhelm Hosenfeld, who rescued several Jewish Poles during the war, helped him live. It's a story of survival more than necessarily showing what a great pianist Szpilman was, but music nonetheless plays an important role in his character development and his need to come out of the Holocaust and play again. The Pianist makes particularly good use of the classical music pieces heard throughout the film, and it serves as a worthy telling of his story. Shine. Another film about a pianist for which the lead actor won an Oscar, this biopic on David Helfgott explores the pressures pushed on him as he grew his piano-playing skills. The movie is primarily about the negative effect parents can have on their children when they want them to be perfect too much. There's an immediate sympathy for David through his ordeal, the film also showing the incredible talent he had at the piano. It handles his mental health with the proper respect, and credit should also go to the actors who portray David. Like I said, Geoffrey Rush won an Oscar for his performance, and he does an excellent job of portraying David during the later scenes. Although what may surprise many is that, after the opening, it takes a long while for Rush to re-enter the movie. Noah Taylor gets plenty of screen time as the younger David, and also does superb work. While a few family members have expressed dissatisfaction with how Shine depicts David's father, I think the ultimate point in the movie is that when you have a gifted child, you should let those talents grow naturally, rather than trying so much to mold them into your perfect image, because that has a chance of leaving mental and physical scars. This is a sensitive portrait of a talented pianist that understands its subject. And my number one favorite musician biopic is Yankee Doodle Dandy. This is a biography on a songwriter and performer whose name most probably won't even recognize, George M. Cohan. This is not me being a know-it-all, by the way. The movie itself has a scene where a bunch of young people meet an older Cohan and have no idea who he is, and he was still alive when the film entered production. However, people absolutely know several of the songs he wrote during his career, including Give My Regards to Broadway and Over There. As played in a wonderful performance by James Cagney, Yankee Doodle Dandy goes through his life and how he accomplished his skills in the theater and with the songs he wrote. The movie was directed by Michael Curtiz, who the same year would come out with Casablanca, and he brought the necessary spark and energy in depicting this story. The more humorous scenes work, the emotional parts have the intended effect, and it does a great job of transitioning to each part of his life. Yankee Doodle Dandy also managed to highlight his successes as well as his more ambitious failures. Of course, there are a number of alterations from Cohan's real story. For example, it combines his two wives into one composite character named Mary. However, the main reason the film works is due to Curtiz's strong direction and Cagney's performance, which gives him several opportunities to show off his incredible dancing skills. Yankee Doodle Dandy is a more than successful biography on this major American songwriting icon. Now let me know in the comments what your favorite musician biopics are, and I'll see you next time.